Do you believe that? Do you believe that? I end up in a hotel and they put me in a room with an upside down maple leaf as if to indicate distress. Isn't that just so cute?
Let's go!
It starts with an A and ends with anxiety. Off the charts levels of passion. That's just a nightmare. With you wherever you are. Welcome to LFR. Leafs lose 3-1 to the Ottawa Senators. That was game 82. My friends, tragically, yet mercifully, it's over. There are no more games remaining in the 2025-26 NHL season for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They can't hurt us anymore. Which actually isn't true. And we're going to talk about all that. But first, hey, we all watched the games this year, and one of the teams on the ice dominated basically every game. And if you want to dominate off the ice as much as that team dominated on the ice, then you need to check out the Toyota Tacoma. Its standard I-Force engine boasts an incredible towing capacity of up to 6,400 pounds, and that is just so many gosh darn pounds. Whether you're hauling your gear to a beer league game where hopefully you don't get outshot by 25 for a record amount of times, or you're going to a road game where hopefully the team that you're cheering for doesn't get outshot by a record 25 shots. Oh my gosh! Anyway, whether you're heading out to one of your own games or on a little road trip to see your favorite team, the Toyota Tacoma has you covered. The available power liftgate makes it so simple and easy to take your gear in and out of your Toyota Tacoma. It's the most powerful Tacoma ever, don't you know? If you want to experience power, capability, and convenience, you need to check out the Toyota Tacoma. Visit shoptoyota.ca or visit your local Ontario Toyota dealer during Red Tag Days, which is right now through May. Now, a lot of people want me to respond to the Athletic article that came out today about this disastrous season written by Chris Johnston, James Myrtle, and Jonah Siegel. Don't worry, I'll get there. What I do want to tell you is that most of this video will not be in a hotel room. I actually shot most of this video a couple days ago after game 81. You might be amazed to know most of the video is directed directly at Keith Pelley and the Toronto Maple Leafs. If you want my quick thoughts on the game that happened, Leafs lost. We've seen that a lot this season. They got completely dominated in puck possession, time in the offensive zone, and shots on goal, which you've seen a bunch of times this season. William Nylander was the only guy who scored, which you've seen a bunch of times this season. Simone Benoit tried to hit a guy by trying to jump on top of him like Super Mario, and I like that, actually. And true to form, true to the criticism that has been inside of that locker room and out from the beginning of the season onward, and in a lot of ways, many years before, they led the team in yadas per 60. No one cares. No one's scared. The Leafs are now guaranteed to be the 5th worst record in the entire National Hockey League, which means they get a top 5 pick. No, it doesn't. In fact, they have a ridiculously high chance that they'll give up the 6th overall pick to the Boston Bruins. Oh my gosh, Steve, really? Well, they could also give up the 7th. You got to remember, there's 2 lotteries. The Leafs could win. They could get the first pick. They could also lose both of them and get leapfrogged by 2 teams that finished ahead of them. The Islanders had the 10th worst record last year, and they ended up with Matthew Schaefer. It's a lottery. But that's okay. Those mistakes were made by a previous administration, and good times are ahead. Right? The article that came out today from The Athletic that I'm sure is going to be asked about at tomorrow's locker cleanup is a disaster. However bad I said, and you saw, Keith Pelley's press conference was a week or two ago, This is worse. Remember how Keith Pelley basically began the press conference angry at the notion that Rogers' ownership is cheap? Guess what? They're cheap. And some of you thought, oh, are they leaning into AI or something? Yeah, they're leaning all the way in. And like, not in the, hey, this could be a useful tool kind of way, in the, hey Siri, open Google kind of way.
Okay, I found this on the web for open Google kind of way. Check it out.
I mean, that's a little on the nose. Ed's listening, everyone! One of the big things people were upset about from this article is that the Leafs canceled the father's trip at the beginning of the year, and then they haphazardly threw it together in March, which makes absolutely no sense. But the other thing was that staff members of the team usually got to bring their dad or their mentor, and they weren't permitted to this year. Cost cutting. So the Leafs made this decision. We all know how much Keith Pelley loves AI. Why don't we have a gander at what AI thinks of this plan? My hockey company is worth well over $10 billion. Should I allow staff members to bring family members to a hockey game like we always have, or should I be a soulless monster? The response was, a $10 billion valuation is an incredible milestone. Congratulations on building such a powerhouse. When you're operating at that scale, the soulless monster route usually looks better on paper to a strictly clinical accountant, but it rarely survives the reality of long-term culture. Interesting. Anyway, listen, right now, I'm on a TV show called Canada Reads on CBC, where I'm championing a book. Where did I put it? Where's the book? Oh, it's one of the things that I've put the tripod on top of, so that's not very helpful, is it? Drew, can you put a picture of it next to me? Thanks, buddy. It's called Searching for Terry Punch-Out by Tyler Hellard. The competition is, there's 5 books championed by 5 authors. It's a 4-day show. Every day, one of the 5 books is eliminated. Day 1, I survived. I made it past the first round. Isn't that cool? Day 2, surprisingly, I survived. Now we're in uncharted territory, folks. Today, day 3, I survived. Which means tomorrow, I'm going into the finale at CBC with my book, Searching for Terry Punch-Out, against a book called The Cure for Drowning, championed by Tegan Quinn, otherwise known as Tegan from Tegan and Sarah. What a ridiculously silly life. And honestly, it has been such a breath of fresh air and a wonderful thing to be able to talk about nearly anything but the Leafs. Worth mentioning that one of the main characters in my book did actually play for the Leafs, and he talks about how they used to lose all the time. Don't worry, Terry. They still do. I tell you that to tell you, I know some people were chomping at the bit. You got to do a video reacting to that article. I will expire. I will. There's just simply too much to do. But I'm going to make you wait. I'm going to make you yearn. I'm going to make you read. Canada Reads. You have homework. You have to read that article in The Athletic by Chris Johnston, James Myrtle, and Jonas Siegel. You got to watch Locker Cleanout tomorrow. You got to watch these guys hopefully get asked difficult questions. Because the Leafs are in dire peril. It doesn't seem like anyone has any idea what's going on. And I'm about to get into that, so let me wrap this up. But here's what I want to say. Someone texted me today and said, is Keith Pelley the new Harold Ballard? No. There's no way, no matter how bad of a job Keith Pelley does, that he could ever be Harold Ballard. Keith Pelley is an employee. Remember that. He's the CEO. Ed Rogers owns the vast majority of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. He probably owns the vast majority of this country. If you want to take on a little bit more homework and learn a little bit more about how screwed this situation is, I'm going to tell you to read Rogers versus Rogers again. Don't roll your eyes. There's also a play. Believe it or not, they made this book into a play. You can go and watch the play. Before I wrap it up for this miserable season and throw it to myself, let me just say I'm so thankful that all of you joined me for this. You're not obligated to watch me. And I'm always grateful that you do. And it's been 19 seasons of doing this. Half my life, man. And next season, no matter how good or bad it is going to be season 20. And I can't wrap my head around that. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Me, take it away. And so ends the most miserable Leafs season that this fan base has seen in many, many years. We've seen this Leafs team wilt in big moments before. We've seen this Leafs team be the second most aggressive and the second most passionate team on the ice many, many nights. And we've seen this team had to get dragged, pulling teeth, kicking and screaming to just stick up for themselves and stick up for each other. This season was the most loathsome, hateable, pathetic version of all of the worst aspects of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And yet, there may be a salvageable version of the Leafs, a team that could contend for a playoff spot, make the playoffs, maybe even contend for something more. There might be something left in there somewhere if you sift through the rubble. The D-core has a lot of impressive parts, guys with great resumes, guys who had kind of good seasons even though the team was awful. They're too old. The D-core as a whole is too old. They're not nearly mobile enough. They don't move the puck. The goaltending took a step back this season from the season before. But even still, there were a lot of games that you could say that they stole. They make some good saves. Their numbers weren't even all that bad, even though they were a step below the season before. You cannot rely on them to show up to work. You don't know who is going to be able to give you 40, 50, and if need be, 60 games. You don't know with this tandem at the beginning of the season who your starter for the playoffs are going to be, should you be blessed enough to even make the playoffs. You have to make a decision there. You cannot lose Dennis Hildeby. Up front, you have some young pieces that are pretty interesting. Easton Cowan, once he was kicked in the butt after that Radko Gudas thing with Matthews. Holy cow, did his season turn around. Love this kid. Matthew Nyes, this guy is the make and model of a Jeep. He is still incredibly young. I think his contract is going to age wonderfully, and he's got a lot of skill to boot. John Tavares, maybe shouldn't be a center going forward, but he makes less than $4.5 million and just scored 30 goals. You can find use for that player. William Nylander, somehow, some way, highest point per game total of his career this past season. There is a superstar in there that is every bit as good as every superstar in the league. You just don't see that superstar every night, and that's what sets him apart, or rather, sets him behind that class of superstar. And then there's Austin Matthews, the key to it all. The guy who scored 60 goals, not once, but twice. The captain of this team who had his knee blown out. No one defended him, and no one even checked up on him. Will he ever be the same again? Will he ever go back to what he was? And will you stick up for him if that ever happens again? Here's an uncomfortable truth. Even when Matthews was scoring 60 goals, they weren't winning the division, they weren't getting out of the first round, and they weren't getting out of the second round either. Let's look at the Florida Panthers, right? Sasha Barkov was considered one of the best two-way players, one of the most underrated players in the entire NHL for a long time, and had some really good regular seasons for quite a while before this version of the Florida Panthers showed up. A team built on speed, skill, violence, and passion. I have a very important question. Can you replicate that? Can you create a version of that? Can you build around this player? Is that something you're capable of? Because if it's not, the situation becomes a lot more dire. A lot of people are talking about a potential Austin Matthews trade, and I can assure you an Austin Matthews trade would be a disaster. He makes $13.25 million. He'll be 29 when next season arrives. He has a full no move clause. You saw what the Rangers got for Artemi Panarin, right? That trade sucked. That's because he got to basically say, I want to go to this one team. And there is nothing stopping Austin from doing the same. And yet you can't have a repeat of what happened with Marner, this star leaving who was always going to leave, leaving for Nick Waugh, who you somehow managed to parlay into a first and a fifth. But even still, that's not even close to what you could have got if you traded him when his contract was designed for him to be traded in the spring of 2023. And as long as we're talking about repeating mistakes, let me talk directly to Keith Pelley right now, the CEO of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Keith, I'm not totally certain if you and I have ever met, but I think we did. I got hired by Rogers Sportsnet at the beginning of the 2014-15 season, which was the first year of that gigantic deal between Rogers and the NHL. And I got hired there in a behind-the-scenes role. Before you saw me writing articles, before you saw me making little videos on their YouTube channel and on their website, the behind-the-scenes role was to write a prep sheet. Because here's the thing. Rogers owns so many TV stations, so many radio stations, fewer than they used to, but they own so many radio stations, so many TV stations, so many magazines, remember those, so many of those things, but not everyone who works in TV and on the radio and on magazines understand hockey at all. So I was hired to create a prep sheet that included hockey stories that everyone could talk about it and word it in ways that everyone could talk about. I understand the language of fans. I understand being a fan. I understand fandom because I am a fan at the end of the day. And that's it. That's all I am, is a fan. The idea that I keep hearing that Craig Berube might stay on as head coach is asinine. Completely, 110%, unequivocally asinine. Makes no sense at all. And it would be a replication of the mistake you made when you got hired. And that was walking into a situation clearly woefully unprepared in the spring of 2024, seeing the most obvious thing you could possibly see written on the wall, and that is that Brendan Shanahan was done here. It was over, man. But hey, I just got here. And you let him stay on, and you kept him for a year, and you let him trade for his job with trades like the Scott Laughton deal, which you got killed on, and then got killed on the second one as well. And worst of all, the Brandon Carlo deal. Oh my goodness. Listen, Brad Treliving can wear all kinds of blame for that, and I'm sure he deserved it. You were in the room. At the end of the day, you're the CEO, and you were in the room. So you let him make those mistakes, and then you fired him. Like we all knew you were going to fire him. And then you did the most Rogers thing ever that there is to do. You replaced Brendan Shanahan with nobody. Because why? Because Brad Treliving, who you saw in the room make those very not good trades,
You saw him and you gave him more responsibility, Keith. Or what is it? He's supposed to just go directly to you? You run 6 sports teams at the same time. The Leafs, the Raptors, TFC, the Marlies, the 905, and the Argos. And everything got more dysfunctional, more chaotic, and everything got worse. Brad was paralyzed this year. He didn't make a trade from July until a few days before the trade deadline. That was the longest gap of any team in the 32-team National Hockey League, except for 3. And all I keep hearing is that Craig Berube has a direct line to you, and I want to know, where have you ever seen anywhere that does business like this and succeed? The head coach gets to just skip over his boss, and there's no boss's boss above him, and go straight to you? Why? For all the great advice you could give him? You're a guy! You're some guy. You have lots of business experience and all kinds of things on your resume, but when it comes to winning hockey games, when it comes to winning games of any sport of any kind, respectfully, what on earth do you know? Well, Craig Berube is a Stanley Cup winning head coach, and well, yeah, okay, that's true and that's wonderful. Please go ahead and provide the class with a list of all the head coaches in NHL history who have won a cup with one team and then gone to another and won another Stanley Cup. One other team and one other Stanley Cup. Give me a list. The list is Scotty Bowman. And the more I think about the Craig Berube connection and with you, the more some things make sense. You haven't given very many press conferences. There are 2 that I can remember. The first is, we're not here to sell jerseys. And the second was Vinny Borghini and Michael Hagee and talking about AI and Eric Tulsky for some reason and rattling all the prospects of every team except for the Leafs. There were 2 moments in those speeches. One was, we're not here to sell jerseys. The other was at the beginning of your most recent press conference, where you talked about the notion that Rogers essentially is cheap. Those are my words, not yours. And you almost got this smoky look on your face, this stoic, blazing passion of how dare you. Fearless leader. We're not here to sell jerseys. We have all the resources in the world. And man, it really is true what they say about enforcers. Every time you get out there on the ice, you feel 6 inches taller. Is that what's going on here, Keith? Because outside of the press conferences, which haven't gone well, by the way, this team, this organization is in absolute free fall. This whole thing about hiring a firm to help you with your executive search sounded cool and sounded good and sounded smart because, hey, this guy's finally admitting that he knows what he doesn't know. And then you find out the firm you hired is a dude, and that dude is an agent for a bunch of executives and coaches. Now, I pray this isn't exactly what it sounds like, which is this dude identifying an easy mark and fleecing you. Hopefully, they help you find the best executives, even if those executives just happen to be, by some wild coincidence, clients of the guy you hired. Ideally, he helps you out with the best clients. But you have got to let them do their job. In that press conference where you were like, we're not doing a rebuild. What? Who's we? Why'd you hire a firm if you know so? Oh, we're not doing a rebuild? We're not doing a rebuild. Oh, okay, good. Well, hockey guy Keith said we're not doing a rebuild. So all right, hockey guy Keith, we're not doing a rebuild. Then what are we doing? Oh, you don't know? Oh, you're hiring some other guy because you don't know? Well, then you shouldn't know. How can you tell a team what they aren't doing when you don't know what they are doing? All you're doing is hiring a candidate within your very specific parameters, which is exactly what Brendan Shanahan did to Brad Treliving. Hey, Brad, do you feel like being the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs? Okay, great. Just know that you cannot trade Mitch Marner or William Nylander. I'm going to call up the core 4, I think before you were even hired, and be like, none of you are getting traded. Well, then you just do it then. You just do it, Brendan. What are you even hiring someone else for? You just do it. And you got there and your first act as CEO was to sit there and let him do it. And then you waited a year and fired the guy. And now, a year after firing him, you're going to do the same thing that he did. Now, I realize I'm speaking to Keith Pelley directly, and there's an audience here that's like, geez, Steve, this is bleak. Yeah. It is bleak. It's bleak because we're sitting here, the passionate, loyal fans of the most ridiculous circus-like team. They lost to their own employee. No team in 100 years of NHL hockey had ever gone into the third period of a Game 7 with a 3-goal lead, or gotten a 3-goal lead in the third period of a Game 7 and lost that Game 7 until the Leafs did it! And we're all still here. And we're all still passionate. And we are gazing upon what is happening with the Toronto Maple Leafs in abject horror and terror, because we know, no matter how bleak it is, we're going to be here the entire time. And if it seems like we're a little passionate and panicky and erratic about all that, yeah. Imagine if you knew that you were about to have to sit through 5 to 10 years of this team bungling through and screwing up a bunch more that you've already kind of seen them do in their lifetime. Imagine the darkest era of this team, followed by the optimism that came with 2016-17 and Game 7 loss after Game 7 loss after Game 7 loss. And that's going to be, those were the good times. Game 7, like Tantalus and Sisyphus and the Leafs. That was the good times. And it's going to be followed up by what appears to be an even darker era than the one that preceded Austin Matthews. We need someone at the wheel. We need an adult in the room. We need someone who has the slightest idea what they're doing. Your actions over the next few weeks will have lasting impacts on this team, this city, and this fan base for years and years to come. You're a 62-year-old man. You're going to retire with millions and millions of dollars in the bank. You will be long into pina coladas in retirement when we are still dealing with the repercussions of your inaction or action. Whatever the heck it is you decide. This is going to impact your reputation. This is going to impact your career. This is going to impact our souls, the fan base's souls. Drop your ego. Drop your boss's stupid, childish ego. Hire the right people. Have a chain of command and go out there and win some hockey games. And don't give us some other scripted tough guy speech about how things are going to be different this time. Show us. Because this could either be one of the greatest season-to-season comebacks around the league that we've seen in a number of years, or it could be us walking into one of the darkest eras in franchise history, and we haven't even begun to walk into the darkness. Well, that's it for this one and this season. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video and the season. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends. Next season is going to be the 20th season of Leafs Fan Reaction. I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to it. And I hope it's a lot more fun than this season was. Because, ugh. Subscribe to stay up to date on everything this goofy, weird clown show of a team does this off-season, which is an even longer off-season than normal.